Ever wondered why some people thrive on checklists, whilst others can barely stand to make plans? Why some folks are laser-focused on practical details, while others live in the world of ideas? Well, here's the thing. Personality plays a massive role, and today, I'm diving into my own, INTPA, with an occasional INTJ slip. Let's break it down. Following my last post on MBTI, I wanted to share my personality type with commentary. For those of you who are visual learners, I've created a handy graphic that captures the MBTI breakdown. My last post outlines the 16 personality types. I'm an INTPA, but sometimes an INTJA. I've been tested as an INTJ, more on this later. If you haven't already taken the test, you can do it here. Trust me, it's a fun rabbit hole to dive into, only 50 questions. Although we focus on the INTP aspect of the Myers-Briggs Type test, I'll provide some context to the opposites of E, S, F, and J. I'll also touch on the converse of A, which is T. Although this system may feel reductionist, and it is, it's not reductio ad absurdum. We'll get to that too. INTP, or whatever type we land on, is a generalization. It's less a mould than a reflection. It's descriptive, not prescriptive. I'll explain where I diverge from the archetypal INTP and how it's not all just binary, black and white. Before we start, take a moment to like this post. Press the like button, press subscribe if you want to get more posts in your feed, press the bell icon to be notified as new posts appear. Let's get cracking. I'll start at the surface level and go deeper with commentary. Use the chapter markers to skip ahead. The first options are introverted versus extroverted, I and E. Simply put, introverts prefer to be alone, and extroverts prefer to socialize with others. There's more to it than this, but this allows us to move on. We've established where energy comes from, but how do we gather information? That's where intuition and sensing come in. The next two factors are the most important to the MBTI system. They're the engine. This will become apparent presently. N stands for intuition. As the I has already been taken, we go with N. The flip side on intuition is sensing, S. Intuitors look at the big picture to find patterns and possibilities. They tend to wonder about possibilities. What could be? Intuitive types focus on abstract ideas, theories, and future possibilities. They are more comfortable with concepts and patterns than concrete facts. Intuitives are future-oriented, focusing on what might happen or imagining different scenarios. They connect the dots between ideas and often think in metaphor or analogy. Sensors remain in the present looking for concrete details and facts. Sensing types process information that comes directly from their five senses. They focus on the here and now, prioritizing concrete facts and practical realities over abstract theories. They tend to ask, what is? Sensors are detail-oriented and more likely to trust information they can observe or measure directly. Using some data examples, intuitives will look for underlying patterns or connections between the pieces of information rather than focusing on individual details. Sensors will focus on the specifics and deal with the facts of the present moment, favoring practical applications over abstract possibilities. Intuitives are more comfortable with ideas and future possibilities, whereas sensors prefer concrete details and practical applications. Intuitives focus on the why and how, while sensors are more focused on the what and now. This distinction drives how each type processes and prioritizes information. Intuition thrives on imagination and foresight, whilst sensing deals with the tangible, present realities. It's like that time I started reading about quantum mechanics, which led me to explore the history of science fiction, and before I knew it, I was deep in a Wikipedia rabbit hole about space-time paradoxes. That's the beauty and the curse of being an intuitive. The other part of the core engine is the pair of thinking T versus feeling F. Obviously, everyone thinks, so let's define what we mean. Thinkers focus on logic, objectivity, and consistency. They base their decisions on logic and objective criteria. They prioritize fairness, consistency, and facts over personal feelings. Thinkers tend to ask, what makes sense? Or, what's the most logical outcome? They value rationality and efficiency in decision-making and often detach emotions from the process. Feelers are about values, harmony, and empathy, prioritizing harmony and compassion, and maintaining relationships over strict logic. They make decisions based on personal values and the emotional impact on others. Feelers tend to ask, how will this affect people? Or is this the right thing to do emotionally? They consider how decisions align with personal or group values and care about emotional well-being. Their approach to problem-solving differs. A thinker might approach a problem by weighing pros and cons, evaluating the most efficient solution, or considering what's objectively best, regardless of how people feel about the outcome. A feeler might approach a problem by considering how a decision impacts others, prioritizing fairness in terms of people's emotions, and ensuring that everyone's feelings are taken into account. Thinkers value logic, objectivity, and consistency in their decision-making processes, whereas feelers prioritize empathy, harmony, and personal values. Thinkers might focus on efficiency, while feelers focus on maintaining positive relationships and making sure decisions align with emotional or ethical values. Perceiving types, P, are flexible, adaptable, and spontaneous. They prefer to keep their options open and enjoy going with the flow. Perceivers tend to avoid rigid plans, preferring to explore possibilities and adapt as new information comes in. They thrive in environments that allow them to remain open-ended and often approach life as a continuous exploration of ideas. Perceivers ask, what are the possibilities? They favor exploration over closure and are comfortable with uncertainty. They don't rush decisions and prefer to remain flexible until more information is available. J, on the other hand, like structure, planning, and making decisions. They prefer closure, wanting to organize their world with clear rules and schedules. They value order and are more likely to stick to decisions once made. Judges tend to be goal-oriented and enjoy creating systems to manage their tasks and goals effectively. Judges ask, what needs to be done? They tend to enjoy creating structure and making firm decisions, feeling more comfortable when things are organized and settled. Comparatively, using scheduling scenarios, a perceiver might prefer leaving their schedule open, allowing them to adjust plans as new opportunities arise or as their priorities shift. A judger is likely to have a detailed schedule and a clear to-do list, feeling more at ease once they know exactly how things will unfold. Perceivers like to keep things open and flexible, favoring adaptability over structure, whilst judges prefer order, plans, and closure. Perceivers are exploratory, while judges are more decisive and goal-oriented. And when it comes to steering the car as a perceiver, I'm happy to change lanes and take detours. Judges, on the other hand, like sticking to the route, even if it means traffic jams. I referred to the middle terms as the engine. Why is that? The intuition, sensing, and thinking-feeling dichotomies drive the way we process information and make decisions. These two pairings are at the heart of how we think, perceive the world, and interact with it, making them more influential in shaping our personality than the other pairings of introversion, extraversion, i.e., or perceiving judging, PJ. Intuition versus sensing defines how you gather information. Are you focused on abstract patterns and possibilities, N, or are you grounded in concrete facts and present realities, S? This is how your mind takes in the world. Thinking versus feeling, on the other hand, determines how you make decisions based on that information. Do you prioritize logic and objectivity, T, or do you emphasize values and harmony, F? This is how your mind processes the world. Together, these two dichotomies form the core of your cognitive approach to life, how you perceive and how you decide. They're the engine that drives your overall personality type, while the I, E, and PJ preferences determine how that engine is expressed outwardly or internally, and how structured or flexible you are in applying it. Think of IE and PJ as the framework around the engine. IE determines where you focus your energy, inside yourself or externally, and PJ shapes how you apply your engine, with adaptability or structure. But NS and TF are the raw gears grinding away in your mind, shaping your core decision-making processes. The engine is built up from cognitive factors, which are stacked in a specific order: dominant, auxiliary, tertiary, and inferior. This order affects how you interact with the world and shapes your approach to life. If you want more detailed information on these factors, refer to my recent blog post, but here's a quick rundown. Each MBTI type has a unique engine made up of these functions, and they act as the driving force behind your thinking, decision-making, and behavior. The order matters. A dominant function will drive most of your thinking, while your inferior function tends to show up awkwardly or underdeveloped. Let's look at the INTP as an example. For an INTP, the engine is built from N, intuition, and T, thinking. But within that, the dominant cognitive function is introverted thinking, TI, the T in INTP. This goes beyond just being analytical. Being an introvert means this thinking happens internally. You're constantly analyzing, refining, and making sense of things in your own head, building a complex internal framework for how the world works. But where does the extroversion come into play? The auxiliary function for INTPs is extroverted intuition, NE. Wait, what? Doesn't the I in INTP mean introvert? How does this extroversion sneak into the equation? Here's how. Every type has a balance of introverted and extroverted functions. Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean all your thinking stays internal. The auxiliary function balances your dominant function. In the case of INTPs, while introverted thinking, TI, is dominant, extroverted intuition, NE, helps you explore possibilities, connect ideas, and engage with the outside world. It's this external idea generation process that fuels your inner logical framework. So yes, the I means you process information internally, but the way you explore those ideas involves engaging with external possibilities. Now that we've established the dominant and auxiliary functions, let's move on to the remaining parts of the engine, the tertiary and inferior functions. While they don't take center stage, they still influence your personality and behavior, just in subtler ways. For an INTP, the tertiary function is introverted sensing, SI. This is your link to the past. It's not something you use as frequently as your TI or NE, but it's there when you need it. SI helps you compare new information to past experiences. It might manifest as a reliance on routines, or a subtle attachment to familiar places or processes. It doesn't drive your day-to-day decisions, but it's in the background, offering a sense of continuity and internal stability. Think of SI as a reference library. When your dominant TI is working away, trying to make sense of something, it might quietly pull data from SI, memories, facts, or personal history. It's less about actively seeking out sensory details, and more about quietly grounding you when needed. Lastly, we come to the inferior function, extroverted feeling, FE. This function often feels awkward or underdeveloped in an INTP. FE is about understanding social dynamics and fostering harmony in relationships. For INTPs, it's the function they use the least naturally, which is why engaging with emotions, especially those of others, can sometimes feel like stepping into uncharted territory. When FE comes into play, it's often under stress. You might suddenly find yourself overly concerned with how others perceive you, or you might struggle to handle emotional conflicts, even though your usual mode is to focus on logic and analysis. It's like the weakest link in the engine, reliable when needed, but prone to sputtering under pressure. Why does this matter? The tertiary and inferior functions balance the rest of your cognitive stack. SI helps ground your abstract ideas with real-world context, while FE, though less comfortable for INTPs, nudges you toward better understanding others' emotions. Though they're not in the spotlight, they play supporting roles in rounding out your personality and adding depth to your preferences. So to summarize, dominant, introverted thinking, TI, is your analytical engine. Auxiliary, extroverted intuition, NE, is your idea generator, exploring the world of possibilities. Tertiary, introverted sensing, SI, is the memory bank, offering stability and comparison to past experiences. Inferior, extroverted feeling, FE, is the emotional compass, sometimes underdeveloped, but there when needed, albeit clumsily. Now that we've built the engine, the core NS and TF pairings that power your cognitive functions, it's time to explain how the rest of the system fits together. If NS and TF represent the internal mechanics of how you think and process information, then IE, introversion versus extroversion, and PJ, perceiving versus judging, are the chassis and steering system that guide how this engine interacts with the outside world. Introversion versus extroversion, the chassis. The IE preference acts as the chassis of your personality. It's the structural frame that determines where your energy is focused. Do you orient your mental processes inward, preferring to build ideas and frameworks inside your head, or do you direct your energy outward, seeking engagement with the external world? Introverts focus inward. They draw energy from solitude and introspection, working through their thoughts in private before they feel the need to act. Extroverts focus outward. They draw energy from social interactions and external engagement, processing their thoughts by bouncing ideas off others or acting in the world. Your IE preference frames how your cognitive engine operates in daily life. As an introvert, your TI and NE functions, in the case of INTP, largely happen inside your mind, quietly working through ideas and possibilities before expressing them. For an extrovert, the opposite is true. Their internal processes would likely be more influenced by outward actions and interactions. Perceiving versus judging, the steering system. Where IE is the chassis that gives you structure, the PJ dichotomy is the steering system. It directs how you apply the engine, whether you prefer to keep your options open and adapt to new information, or whether you prefer to lock in decisions and create structure. Perceivers are adaptable and flexible. They're comfortable with uncertainty and prefer to explore possibilities before making decisions. It's like steering the car in whatever direction feels most interesting at the time. Judges are structured and decisive. They prefer clear plans and want to close decisions as soon as possible, creating an organized, predictable environment. For them, the steering system is more about sticking to a straight course once a direction has been chosen. In the case of an INTP, the P preference means the steering is more fluid. You're not in a rush to lock in decisions, preferring to explore multiple paths as your NE continues to generate ideas. For an INTJ, by contrast, the J preference means they prefer to take the engine's insight and lock onto a specific plan or goal more quickly. Putting it all together, so if NS and TF are the engine driving how you think, IE is the chassis framing how your personality orients toward the world, and PJ is the steering system determining whether you prefer adaptability or decisiveness in navigating life. These layers work together. The engine might be the heart of it all, but without the chassis and steering system, it wouldn't have any practical direction in your everyday experiences. Now that we've built the engine, NS and TF, and assembled the chassis and steering system, IE and PJ, there's one final component that brings the whole system to life, the AT dimension. This is the emotional overlay that influences how confidently or reactively you navigate the world. It's like the suspension system, adding stability, assertive, or amplifying stress responses, turbulent, as you move through life. The AT dimension is a more recent addition to some modern interpretations of the MBTI. It describes how you handle stress, make decisions, and manage confidence. Assertive individuals tend to be more self-assured, confident, and less affected by stress. They are comfortable with their decisions and less likely to worry about what others think. If you're assertive, you might find that you're able to move through life with greater ease and emotional stability. You're less likely to second-guess yourself and more comfortable with the choices you've made, even if they don't align with others' expectations. You have a steadier suspension system, absorbing the bumps of life with minimal jostling. Turbulent individuals tend to be more self-critical, prone to stress, and are often driven by the need to improve. They're highly attuned to the opinions and feedback of others, which can push them toward constant growth but also lead to greater anxiety. Effect on personality. If you're turbulent, you may be more sensitive to how others perceive you or to how well you're performing. While this can drive you to continuously improve, it can also make you more prone to stress and emotional ups and downs. Your suspension system is a bit more reactive, amplifying the impact of bumps in the road. The AT dimension adds a layer of nuance to the MBTI framework. It doesn't change the core engine or chassis of your personality type, but it affects how smoothly you navigate life's challenges. Whether you're an INTP-A or INTP-T, you'll still have the same core functions, but the A or T dimension affects how you manage stress, handle self-doubt, and interact with others. For example, INTP-A, assertive, you're more likely to feel confident in your internal logic, TI, and your explorations of possibilities, NE. You can adapt to changes without overthinking your decisions and are less likely to be swayed by external pressures. INTP-T, turbulent. You might find yourself constantly questioning whether you've made the right decision or worrying about how others perceive your ideas. This could push you to refine your thinking even further, but it may also cause emotional stress when dealing with uncertainty or social dynamics, FE. Ultimately, The AT dimension acts as the suspension system that influences how stable or reactive your overall personality type feels. Assertive types feel more grounded, with less concern about how they're perceived or how well they're performing, while turbulent types are more sensitive to feedback and tend to feel the bumps in the road more acutely. Whether you're more A or T, it's simply another piece of the puzzle that helps explain how you navigate life with the engine and chassis you've built. Enough about you, let's talk about me. I'm decidedly an introvert, but it's still not that simple. Each of these dichotomies is on a spectrum. When I took the most recent MBTI quiz, I scored 75% introverted. This means I am also 25% extroverted, so not a full-on recluse shut-in. I can attest that I am an introvert. I can and do operate in the public sphere. I was a professor and management consultant, so whilst being in public isn't my bag, I can play the part when the rationale for being in public feels meaningful and aligns with my interests. As an INTP, I don't want to talk about the weather or hear the same thing twice. I avoid these situations and people who do these things habitually. I also prefer smaller groups to larger groups. I've been a professional musician and played in bands so I can navigate social environments. Again, since we are all focused on a similar desired goal, there are no problems. Even performing on stage is just me or the band playing to a monolith. My focus is on my musical performance, not on some theatrics. I don't need or want the attention. Even when I've been told I have this or that positive trait, it doesn't matter to me. Sure, it strokes my ego, but I don't even know the source. Some stranger praising me, no accounting for taste. After a show, I'd just as soon retire to my room and chill out. No parties, please, no parties, not my bag. On this, the scale placed me at 81% intuitive versus 19% observant or sensing. Remember that the intuitive aspect has auxiliary and tertiary cognitive functions. As someone with extroverted intuition, I like to generate ideas and explore a world of possibilities. In a vacuum, this would mean that I can start a million projects and not care if I finish any. I'm not concerned with closure. Good enough is good enough in my book. No need to allow perfection to become the enemy of the good, and perfection doesn't exist in the first place, so it's a fool's errand to seek it. Where I am somewhat atypical, a traitor to INTPs the world over I'm sure, is that my introverted and extroverted sensing is nearly balanced. I scored an N instead of an S by a statistical margin of error. It could have gone either way, but on the tests, it never does. I balance empiricism with reason. A good combination if I do say so myself. Kant would be proud. Keep in mind that extroverted intuition means that I collect information from exploring the outside world. This is an auxiliary factor, so it is relatively important. Less utilized is the introverted sensing factor. This serves as a memory bank, and I analyze inputs to compare and contrast them with my experiences. This is a no-brainer. Whether I test INTP or INTJ, the T is constant. As the saying goes, INTJs are the coldest humans. INTPs are the warmest robots. I've been accused all my life as not having feelings. I've been called Mr. Spock and Data, both of Star Trek fame. I don't even contest this one. My test results set me at 78% thinking. That leaves 22% for feeling. Not exactly a robot, but the T is derived from intuitive thinking, the dominant cognitive factor, so it hits hard. I don't really have anything more to add here, save to mention that extroverted feeling is the inferior cognitive function at play here. It doesn't get used very often and could probably use some watering and nurture. Effectively, this translates to my not wanting to share my feelings. This sounds about right. I've got better things to discuss anyway. The test put me at 61% perceiving, or prospecting as they call it. This leaves 39% for judging. This is likely why it's so easy for me to flip-flop over time. I feel that I am more a P than a J. Here's why. Perceivers figure out things as they go, sort of zen. In terms of linguistics and grammarians, they are descriptivists, observing, making connections. Following this scenario, judges are prescriptivists. They have an idea of how things should be and seek to make it right. J's are goal seekers. That's why they are said to make good leaders. I don't think in terms of goals. To me, goals are arbitrary. That's why I'm not the best project manager. I can't convince myself that deadlines matter, so I'm certainly in no position to force this belief on anyone else. The best I can do is to rationalize that some person believes such and such to be important, and that person signs the paychecks. So I can get there. I don't care about planning in general. In economics, we talk about marginality, incrementalism. When we set out to do something, we should adopt a Bayesian approach. Don't get married to a goal. It might change. Every journey begins with the first step. Take it, look around, take another step. This thinking may have been reinforced when I was a recording engineer. Many of my projects never saw the light of day. For one project in particular, I worked over a weekend for 50 hours straight to mix tracks to be sent to Spain to be used as a soundtrack. I worked until I was borderline delusional. The mix sounded great, and it made it to the airport on time. The next day, the film project was cancelled. For whatever reason. I never even knew its name. In any case, I got paid. I made a network connection with the producer and worked on future projects. If I was fixated on every unreleased project, it would be frustrating. An INTJ would be frustrated not being able to control the outcome. As an INTP, I just went on to the next project. It wasn't much different as a management consultant. I'd spend 3 months with a client and leave them with a recommendation. Whether they agreed with the recommendation, most often they did. They probably implemented about a quarter of them. They'd spend upwards of $1 million to get advice. They'd get it and not employ it. This should keep giving your free advice in perspective. If $1 million isn't convincing enough, well, In closing, let's come back up for air. INTJs are supposed to be good with organisation and achieving goals. INTPs are not goal-oriented, and they have a reputation for procrastinating. I'd like to give this a little perspective. It's not procrastinating if you don't have the goal to begin with. If someone else established a goal or deadline, that's pretty suspect to an INTP. The procrastination label comes from non-INTPs, trying to force-fit their worldview upon us. INTPs aren't good with authority either. Respect needs to be earned, and you don't get to define the criteria. Whether you're an INTP, INTJ, or somewhere in between, remember, personality tests like MBTI are just tools to help you understand yourself better, not boxes to lock yourself into. So, what's your type? And how do you break the mould? Are you an INTP or INTJ? Do you know someone who is? What are you and how do you relate? If you like this segment, please leave a like. It helps the algorithm to recommend it to more peeps. Subscribe if you want to see more and press the bell icon to be notified of new content as it's released. Meantime, cheers.